Brother, if you just analyze history, Malcolm X, El Haj Malik told us that history rewards all research. Every struggle has been the young people. Even the civil rights movement, it was not the old heads. It was the young people who marched with Martin Luther King. It was the young people who were behind El Haj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X. It was the young people who was in the Black Panther Party. And if we remember our brother in the Million Man March, the Million Youth March, Brother Khalid Muhammad, it was the young people. And so, no, I'm not surprised as this information is going out there. The old heads, you know, my peers and above, most of them, we have to write them off. And we just have to leave a legacy. For the, you know, we had youth underneath that, but that was about the average age, at 35 to... These are people who've been through the educational system already. They know they've been bamboozled. They know that they did not get their history, and they're waking up. And I think there was an article on the internet that said, how come more people are learning about African history on the internet than they did in school? It's because we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and all secrets are now going to be revealed. But you have to be a seeker. You have to be a seeker of the knowledge. The blind will continue to stay blind. Okay, but those people who are seeking knowledge, see, at one time, you could only get this knowledge if you belong to the Freemasons, the Masonic order, or some secret order. But in the age of Aquarius, that age is going, see, the Piscean age is coming to an end. That's all over. Now we're coming into an age where all those who are seeking will be able to get it. You can learn on the internet in a month, but it would take you a year to learn in 1990. As you can see, the African-centered education we must organize and be prepared to teach the children at home on the weekends. First, every educational organization should be based on a detailed, written, comprehensive plan. And every written plan should have the architectural blueprint of the organization and the process of its function and structure towards the whole. So you can see these circles interrelate each other. You have the African Council of Elders, which we talk about. And even before that, the ancestors. We have the African professional, the educational team that's actually going to do the teaching. You have the physical plant, your actual building or houses, wherever you're going to do this at. Then you have a dynamic African-centered administration, an administration that understands ancient Kemet, can speak the Medu Neter, understands the spirituality, and a faculty that's going to talk about the exact same thing. Not people who say, do what I say, but not what I do. People who are actually living the legacy. And the curriculum is designed to empower you. And the students are all people of African descent.
It's important that those of us who watch these types of programs in our chat room, that we try to be as courteous and respectful and as informative and to the point as possible, because people are learning even from what is said in the chat room. You know, people are finding out, can I come back again? Are these people I want to engage with? Can we grow together? And so what we do is very important. It isn't just those of us who are up here in front of this camera, but those of you who may never be in front of the camera, you're as significant as we are, because the question you ask may send me to do research I never thought about. You know, you may point out something to me that I saw and missed, and now I'll go back and look at it and say, you know, that brother or that sister really opened my eyes. Now I have to change my view to some degree on this thing. So we're about seeking knowledge. You know, the Quran as a document said, seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, even to the ends of the earth, even as far as China. Now that's the Quran saying. It didn't say seek knowledge only in the Quran. It says seek from the cradle to the grave, even to the ends of the earth, even as far as China. In those days, China was thought to be the end, the end of the world. So seek knowledge, and then teach the knowledge you have. But be willing to learn, and be willing to say, the one thing I know is how much I don't know. And then open yourself up to know more than you knew before we started the process.
Yes, so the young people, and plus the young people are computer savvy. So no, they're searching up. People are telling me, look, Mfundishi, I saw every YouTube you got. I saw it, like they on it. Once they get tapped into it, once you lead them to the water, they know how to drink. See, the old folks don't. You can lead them to the water, but you can't make them drink. You just show the young people where the water is, they'll go get theirs. You see, people already know they've been bamboozled. Right now, the Wazungu, the Europeans, have taken over the study of ancient Egypt. Almost every book you can buy on ancient Egypt is by a European. And 99.9% of these Europeans are professing that the ancient Egyptians were white people. They even got a new movie come out, The Gods of Egypt, all white cast. They just did a movie last year that didn't make much money. All white cast. Blacks were only slaves in the movie, basically. See, the Cecil B. DeMille's days of the Ten Commandments, that's over, right? And so I want people not to just take my word for it. I want them to be able to read it themselves. You see, I get so excited because when I'm reading with Nature, it's like the ancestors are talking to me directly. I don't need a middle person. Right now, we got a middle person between us and our legacy. We got European white Egyptologists, and many of the black Egyptologists have been whitewashed, so they're preaching the same thing that the white boys are preaching so that they can get a job, so that they can get tenure, so they can work at the university, you know. So when you learn to read it yourself, brother, you ain't got to take nobody's word for it. And there's more literature in the Medu Neter than all the ancient languages together.
Now, I put this one up because I wanted to show all of these symbols of religions. Whenever you go around the world, you see the Baha'i, you see the Buddhist and the Buddhist posture, you see the Buddhist wheel, you see the cross for Christianity, you see what they call the fish for Christianity, which is really a symbol of a vagina, which was used in the ancient Tigris-Euphrates system long before Christianity. We see the symbol for Confucianism. We see the symbol for the Judaic system, the Shinto Japanese system. Again, we see the Star of David or the dog star out of Kemet for the Judaic system. We see the Hindu system, Islamic system, the Sikh system. Everybody's symbol for their system is there except the African symbol for their system. And I contend that the African symbol for what we are talking about, that we call our spiritual system and our religion, the African symbol is a man, a woman, and a child. A man, a woman, and a child, who we call in ancient Kemet Ausar, Aset, and Haru, who the whites have misunderstood, misrepresented, miscopied, called Jesus, Joseph, and Mary. And so that symbol of man and woman and child represent the continuity of life. You cannot have life unless you have two opposite sex that have an intercourse, and a sperm and an egg is passed, and you produce a replication of yourself, which is your eternity, because that is your future. And that must be constantly replicated in every generation in order for life to go on. And so that, as far as I can see, is the symbol that we projected to represent the greater part of how we understood reality. What we're looking at here is other people's symbolizing their understanding of the fragments that they drew from the periphery of our ancestors' understanding.
How can you subscribe to a doctrine that was taught to you by your former oppressors? How does that actually make sense? To subscribe to a doctrine that was taught to you, given to you by your oppressors. Christianity, Brother Sai, is not an indigenous African religion. If it wasn't, and I can prove this to you by sharing this with you. I don't know if your audience is familiar with the verses that were, it was actually a proclamation, or they call it a papal bull, that was produced by Nicholas V. There was also a papal bull that was produced by Alexander IV called the Intercatera. And these papal bulls allowed the Portuguese to go over to Africa and to the New World, brutalize and colonize the people based on the fact that they weren't Christians. They were called pagans. So these papal bulls were written in Latin, but they do have English translations of them, Brother Sai, where the church sanctioned slavery. They said, go over to Africa, brutalize them, colonize them, invade them because they're not Christians. So Christianity is not a religion. It also says in the oh my goodness, in the British Museum that Nubia, they have some artifacts showing that Nubia and Egypt were forcibly converted to Christianity. They were forcibly converted to Christianity. So brothers and sisters, this isn't a Christianity isn't a doctrine that's indigenous to Africa. Islam came with the Arabs. The Arabs actually enslaved the Africans prior to the Europeans, and this doctrine came with them. So brother Sai, my beef is that first of all, I'm not going to subscribe to a doctrine that is promoted and handed to me by my former oppressor. And secondly, it's myths. They're stories, brother Sai. In the Bible, you know, they talk about all of these different characters, and I'm going to call them characters because that's exactly what they are. They don't have any archaeological evidence even showing that these people existed. I mean, in First Kings and in First Chronicles, you read about these stories of King David and how he battled all of these different tribes and he won. And then you had King Solomon. He was supposedly had expanded his kingdom. But where's the evidence of this? Because we see evidence of Tutmosis III in museums where in museums with Stella showing all of his great accomplishments. We see that written. We see our stories written in Medjugorje, in pyramid texts, coffin texts. So we see our story, but where is the story? Where is the evidence that the Hebrews were ever enslaved in Egypt? Where is the evidence? Where's the evidence of King Solomon? It says in the Bible that Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Where's his bloodline, Si? If he had 1,000 women, where's his bloodline today? He should have an existing bloodline today.
Excuse me. Let's say 2000 BC. That's supposed to be the time of Christ. If we take all the information that's available in the ancient world and multiplied it by 100, that would still not equal the information that's written in the Medu-Neter. See, we were prolific. We wrote everything. We wrote on the walls. We wrote on the columns. We wrote on the ceiling. Brother, we wrote on papyrus. We wrote on paper, leaves. You know, so we left information. It's almost like our ancients knew that we were going to be in this situation. And they said, no, we're going to leave images for you. We're going to leave a state of excellence for you. We're going to leave this writing for you because we know that y'all will be able to read it at some point. And you will know the truth for yourself.
So here we have, and I like this one, I would say the Egyptians were black, and they had the world's first known writing system. And so as we look at this system, this is the Medu-Neter. This is what the Europeans call the hieroglyph. Yes. Now, if you look, now this is a writing system that's older than any other writing system in the world, except the ones down in ancient Sudan and in the Great Lakes area, out of which this one comes. And so look here, the cross. Thousands of years before Christianity, there's the cross, which they claim they use as a symbol because of Jesus' dying. So just this one photograph shows that whole concept is a fraud. So just to kind of get you started, so you can look with your eyes and see things, simple little things, you know, that people sort of like think they can say it because we don't have any information. But once you get a little bit of information, you go like, oh, something's wrong with that picture. And then we come here, the pyramid text, the oldest written religious text in the world. At least the oldest written religious text known to the world, because they just entered the Great Mount in Sudan, the Great Temple Mount in Sudan, and they found a whole nother set of writing there that precedes and predates these writings, and I'm pretty sure that they were religious writing. But to us today, the oldest known text is this one in the tomb of Eunice. But even here, it wasn't new. This was somebody repeating an older text. And so in this text, what the Europeans call the book of Genesis, much of the elements of what they call the book of Genesis is found in this text.
Moses supposedly wrote the first 5 books of the Bible. Where is his handwriting? I can go over to Egypt right now and look at the handwriting of our ancestors carved on the pyramid walls. So where's the handwriting of Moses? It says in the New Testament that Paul wrote all of these epistles, these letters to Timothy and to the church of Corinth. Where are these letters? Can we see his handwriting? Where is it? And we can dig a little deeper, Brother Sai. We can even talk about the King James translators and how it says in the Bible that the Bible was inspired. What does it say in the Bible? That it was created or produced by men inspired by God. I think that's what it says in the Bible. But in fact, it was King James and about 47 to 54 translators who decided to come up with another version of the Bible. And they did not, and I'm going to say this, I feel like it's erroneous, Brother Sai, to even call it a translation. Because when you think of a translation, you take something out of one language and you put it into another. Is that correct? But in the British Museum, there, I think it's called, there's a document called the 21 Rules of Translation. And it has the handwriting of Richard Bancroft. And these were rules that the translators had to follow in order to translate the Bible. And one of the rules were that they had to stay as close to the bishop's Bible as possible. So they did not translate the Bible from the original Hebrew. Okay, what they did was they took pre-existing material and they massaged it.
Now, we as Africans gave birth to all humans. So I want to make sure it is clear here as you look here. We as Africans gave birth, and you can see, I know some of my Moor brothers want to say we started in North America, but I want to be realistic here. All humans, as we know it today, started on the continent of Africa. Brother Diop already explained this and talked about the 6 levels of the humanoids, all came out of Africa. And we populated the world. And this map kind of gives you a design of how we came out of the world, how we came out of Africa, moved across Southern Asia, all the way into the South Pacific, Australia, up into Asia, and eventually into North America and South America. So the oldest reborn, we are the original people on all of the continents. They will find African remains.
So this is my proposed theory. The Pleistocene epoch began about 1.8 million years ago and ended roughly about 11,700 years ago. During this time, Homo sapiens evolved. Between 120,000 to 195,000 years ago, the world was in a glacial stage. During this time, the populace migrated to southern Africa, where the oldest evidence of symbolic thought is found. Rudimentary mathematical thoughts also arose there. These ideas propagated following human migratory patterns, reaching Central Africa first and eventually culminating in Kemet. So, brothers and sisters, what this proposed theory is saying is that mathematical thought originated in South Africa. So during this epoch, Homo sapiens evolved. There was an ice age. During the ice age, I believe, my research leads me to believe there were only 5 places in Africa that you can go during this ice age. And one of the places was South Africa, because the rest of Africa was dry. They didn't have food. So they migrated to South Africa. And this is where archaeologists have found the oldest evidence of symbolic thought. Not only did they find the oldest evidence of symbolic thought, but they also found the oldest evidence of a mathematical thought, which corroborates my claim that these ideas were born in South Africa, and they reached Central Africa first, and eventually culminated in Kemet, allowing our ancestors to build the great structures like the pyramids and the Sphinx and all of the great monuments that you see in Kemet. So this is my proposed theory, and this is my agenda. I'm going to first present to you Paleolithic archaeological evidence of mathematics in South and Central Africa, which will show and prove that mathematical thought originated in South Africa. And then I'm going to explain and discuss the mathematical basis of Kemetic structures and some of the building methods of Kemet. So, Brother Sai, today I'm trying to really put an end to the foolery that aliens built the pyramids. It's been, of course, New Age science will say that aliens came down and gave these people, the knowledge to build these monuments, or that aliens came down and picked up the 2-ton blocks for them, and that they didn't have the sophistication to build these monuments or to align them with the stars. Our ancestors did have the knowledge or the ability to align the pyramids with whatever they wanted to align it with. They did have the knowledge or the ability to move 2-ton blocks because they understood math and they understood physics.
And in this text, you find God saying, I created myself out of myself. I caused existence to exist so that I might exist. And then this God, who is called Amun, that which is unknown, then says, I hicker. And when he hicker means to vibrate. It means the same thing as the word. And I hicker and I produce others. So he produces Ptah. But look at Ptah now. No, first he produces Ra. Now Ra is symbolized by the sun. That means energy. And then he produced Ptah. Ptah is symbolized by a mountain. That means matter. So now I've produced matter and energy. And he came into being out of Nun, which is water. So now you got water, you got matter and energy. And in Nun, the Nun out of which this God arrives is black and in darkness. So now you got darkness, but with Ra, you now got light. So out of the darkness into the light. So just like David looked at it later and said, let there be light. He says, I hicker and I created these. And then he said, I cough up Shu and I spat out Tefnut. Shu means the air. Tefnut means the moisture. And then Shu and Tefnut, which is female and male, positive and negative, would produce twins. Those twins would be called the earth and the skies, or the heavens, Geb and Nut. And then Geb and Nut would then give birth to the first humans. Then we're talking about Ausar, Set, Set and Nephthys and On. So that Genesis story that they're using is our Genesis story. Okay? So that's what I mean when I say they are fragments from the periphery of our tradition. And then when God got through making everything, our God, meaning Amun, or whatever name we call him, Atum, whatever names are just descriptions of something, descriptions of characteristics of behavior. And then it says, having done all these things, having created all that my heart desired, I then expanded in it, which means everything that is also not only of me, but is me. So we are indeed, according to our tradition, God, the divine, having the human experience. Or more clearly put, we are expressions of aspects of the divine essence having the human experience.
Haru M. Aketi. If we see here, we see the picture. Some people will call it the Sphinx. That is a Greek name. We see here that it's over 12,000 years old. That means before the last great flood, Haru M. Aketi was already an ancient building, already there. And so we have to be able to come to grips with this. There is no monolithic structure like this any place else in the world this early. So again, I want people to have a close look at this. So, in other words, before our modern world, we had Africans who were great teachers in the ancient world before the great flood or the great deluge kind of destroyed them. But this gives a perfect example of that. This is a picture of the ancient world, and all it does is show us the ancient world before 4240. These were the civilizations, or after 4240, these were the civilizations that came later. So we can see the Hopi Valley coming down the middle of ancient Kemet. We see Kush and Monroe below that. We see Axum over. If we go to Western Africa, we see the great Ghana, Mali, Songhai empires. If we go to the south, we see Zimbabwe. If we move into Asia, we see the Tigers and Euphrates. And then if we move further, we see the Ganges. We see the Indus Ganges, where that's where the Asiatic knowledge came into India. We were the first dynasty in China. So you can see up with the Yellow River, the Shang dynasty. Then we can look down into Cambodia, Kim Buddha, the Black Buddha. We see all that. The knowledge came in there. And Angkor Wat, all of this information are still Africans.
And Brother Sai, this is what you're looking. Look what you're looking at. You're looking at the Rhine's mathematical papyrus. Okay. Now you're looking at the hieratic version of the. This is actually a facsimile of the Rhine's papyrus, and the first line is right here, Brother Sai. It's written in red in hieratic. It's written in red, and I'm getting ready to break down what that line says because I want the people to understand how the ancestors viewed mathematics. And this is what the first line says: that this papyrus is the correct method of investigating nature. Now, remember earlier, Brother Sai, I said that mathematics is the language of nature. So it says the correct method of investigating nature to know all that exists, all mysteries, and all things secret. So the ancestors knew that mathematics was utilized, they viewed mathematics as a tool to investigate nature. And and once you understand nature, then you understand all that exists, all mysteries, and all things secret. So this is how the ancestors viewed mathematics, and this is how they viewed nature. So let's get into the Paleolithic archaeological evidence to support my claim that mathematical thought was born in the South. So what you're looking at is the Lumbombo bone that is found in the McGregor Museum in Kimberley, South Africa. This Lumbombo bone is 37,000 years old. This is the oldest mathematical instrument in the world. And it's found, again, in South Africa. McGregor Museum in Kimberley, South Africa.
And sometimes they combine the goddess, but this is showing that the king has the power of the goddess. The essence of these goddess makes up his character in terms of the force and strength that he represents. This is Jeffrey. This is the 4th dynasty king. They broke off the brother's nose again, but it's clear you're dealing with a young African man. We're looking at Pharaoh Neferefri, 5th dynasty. Again, it's clear he's just starting his locks. He's a young man, but you can clearly see they messed with his nose too. They broke off his beard, but he's an African man. And this is the pyramid complex at Abu Sir, 5th dynasty. We rarely see this complex. This one is this complex is has a 3 pyramid complex also. It's younger than the great one that we accustomed to seeing, but showing there's over 120 something of the or 130 something pyramids in Kemet. But you can see the entire complex of buildings and sites around the complex. Now, this is not the Giza Plateau complex. This is the Abu Sir pyramid complex, which we rarely look at. There, and a lot of deterioration is done there because, we have our enemy runs Egypt now, so they don't take care of our ancient symbols except the ones they think are going to make a few dollars for them. But we need to know that we have other ancient symbols that represents different reflections of ourselves as we try to replicate what down below as we see above in terms of the cosmology.
Africa is what I use it today. Some of our brothers refer to the continent as Arcaboland, but Africa is the terminology I'm going to be using for today. I talk about the world. We've been looking at the world upside down, inside out, and backwards. So even if I give you some good information, you can't use it. Well, here I'm showing you a proper spatial perspective of Africa and the world here. And the Happy River is flowing down north. So I want people to see this. The Happy River is flowing down north, and that means the cataracts start up south. So after Khartoum, you see the first cataract in Sudan. And so there are 5 cataracts in Sudan, and the 6th and last cataract is in Kemet. Europeans have the world backwards, so they got you thinking the 6th cataract is the first cataract. And so this map clearly shows you no water runs uphill unless it's used by a pump. And there's no pump in the Happy River in the north. It's flowing down north from the south. Now we're trapped in mental slavery. And I want to go here. What happened to the highly advanced African civilization in the Happy Itiru Valley? They were clearly the most advanced material culture in antiquity, thousands of years ahead of others, before Greece and Rome. 3,000 years behind ancient Kemet. Now, just think, people, America's only a couple of hundred years old. And imagine somebody's 3,000 years behind you in terms of knowledge, wisdom, and education. So we looked at the Greeks and the Romans as children in terms of knowledge and wisdom. What was the process used to blot out this achievement? I think Brother Sonetta kind of asked this question. The African population from the annals of history. What took us out of history? But more importantly, how and under what circumstances did Africans, among the very first people to invent writing, architecture, nation building, urban planning, construction, engineering, lose their arts and sciences almost completely?
Ausar, this is the 5th dynasty king. Again, as you look at those nice African lips and that nose, I just want you to know that all of these pharaohs throughout, from the beginning of Kemet till the end, was all African men and women. This is their same pyramid complex, just another shot. This is not the 3 at the plateau in Giza. This is the Ausar pyramid complex. This is the place where you also find the bent pyramid and the red pyramid, not far from the step pyramid at Saqqara. This is Pharaoh Teti, 6th dynasty. And we're looking again at some other pyramids. This is pyramids of Pharaoh Sahurus and Pepi II near Saqqara. These are 6th dynasty pyramids. They've fallen into disarray, but they still exist, and you still know that you're in a pyramid complex with temples around them. This is Pharaoh Mentuhotep II of the 11th dynasty. And I always make a joke, they had white paint that they use on his clothing, dark brown to black paint on his skin, and red paint on his hat. So if the Egyptians were red, they certainly had red paint. If they were white, they certainly had white paint, but no, they chose to paint him black. And his features tells you he's an African man. This one I love. This is from the walls of the tomb of Kemetic, the wife of Pharaoh Mentuhotep. I don't know where they found these Asiatic, but they found them, and they left us there, and they're doing the sister's hair. So maybe that's what they're mad about. This is Princess Ushhed, the daughter of Pharaoh Mentuhotep. You can clearly see the princess is an African woman. And this is Pharaoh Amenemhat, 3rd Pharaoh in the 12th dynasty. Now this brother here, I just love him because he's just so African, it's crazy. I mean, he got his locks, and they sculpted in. This is him again. They broke off his nose, but it made no difference. This is him again. There's no way you can hide the blackness of Amenemhat III, the Black Pyramid of Amenemhat in the 12th dynasty.
So now what you're looking at is the geographical location of the Lubombo bone. They found the Lubombo bone near the border cave right here, near Switzerland. Okay, right near Switzerland by the Lubombo Mountains. That's why they call it the Lubombo bone. It was found by the Lubombo Mountains, right between South Africa and Switzerland. There was a site that was excavated back in the 1930s and 1940s, and they found near the cave that this cave was occupied for 120,000 years, and they found several human bone fragments, infants, 5 hominins, 69,000 artifacts, and 43 mammal species. But the most fascinating find was the Lubombo bone. The Lubombo bone is considered the oldest mathematical instrument. It's the first tally stick. Now, it was a tally stick. They were tallying, it had notches, okay? 29 notches. These 29 notches were written on the fibula of a baboon. Okay, now that's important to remember because I'm going to get into the significance of why it was written on the fibula of a baboon. So I want to note that the Lubombo bone is 37,000 years old. Well, 37,000 years old. It was found in South Africa. It's considered the oldest mathematical instrument in the world. And it's a tally stick that has 29 notches. So when you think of 29, you think of the lunar calendar. Is that correct, Brother Sai? You think of the lunar calendar, which consists of 29.4, 29.5 days. Now, when you also think of the lunar calendar, you think of the woman's menstrual cycle, which is highly correlated with the lunar calendar. So there is a high probability, Brother Sai, that this Lubombo bone probably belonged to an African woman tracking her cycle. Tracking the lunar month. So if that is the case, then that would make the African woman the first mathematician in the world. So I want to talk about now the Southern influence. I'm going to go back here, Si. So note that this was written on the fibula of a baboon and it's a mathematical instrument. Now let's look at the Southern African influence on Kemet. What you're looking at, Brother Sai, is a depiction of the god Jehudi. Some people call him Thoth, or the Greeks called him Thoth. But you're looking at Jehudi. Jehudi is associated with divine articulation of speech, writing, science, and what? Mathematics. But look how Jehudi is depicted as a what, Sai? Baboon. A baboon. But I just showed you the oldest mathematical instrument in the world that was produced on the fibula of a what? Of a baboon. So the people of Kemet actually deified, right? Their deification of Jehudi, they deified it using the baboon. Okay? So again, I'm gonna read the subscription. It says Egyptian god Thoth as a baboon squatting on the pedestal over a lotus flower. So the god Jehudi, associated with divine articulation of speech, writing, science, and mathematics, is depicted as a baboon.
This is her burial place. What's important about this is there's no Freemasons yet. There is no Solomon's Temple yet. There is no Rome yet. There is no Greece yet. And look at this magnificent pillar temple carved right out of the living rocks. Okay? And even before Hatshepsut's temple, you can see there was an earlier temple there, centuries before. This is a sculpting of Sister Hatshepsut. She wasn't the queen, she was the pharaoh of Egypt. And she wasn't the first woman pharaoh. Certainly not the only woman pharaoh, and not the first woman pharaoh. She got to be one of the best known of the female pharaohs. This is another shot, I think I took this one myself, of her temple. And this is her brother, Pharaoh Thutmose III, the brother of Pharaoh Hatshepsut. He takes over. This is another tough brother. He does a lot of building. He is the brother who constructs this enormous temple, which is the prototype for all Masonic temples. Even though they keep talking about this Temple of Solomon stuff, that ain't where it's at. I'm going to show you, you know. This is Tomb of Rekhmar, advisor for taxation, justice, and foreign affairs under Thutmose III. And I just wanted to show that even the workers and the technicians in Kemet were all black, of different shades of brown and black. Inside the Pillared Temple at Waset, this is the great temple that we build. We call it temple, but Dr. Asa Hilliard taught us that it's called Ipet-Isut. It is a university. It is a training facilities that train people from all over Africa and East Africa, which we now call the Middle East, during that period of time. This is where you come to study arithmetic, geometry, writing, medicine, and other sciences.
Let me show you something else. What you're looking at is a picture that was taken outside of the Luxor Temple in Egypt, and it was built by Ramses II. And you're looking at the base of a tekken that is decorated with what, Brother Sai, at the bottom? Baboons. Now we're looking at the weighing of the soul from the papyrus of Ani. Okay? And you have who right here? You have Jehudi. You have Jehudi right here. And then you have Anubis or Anpu. Yeah, Anpu or Anubis. You know, weighing the soul. Right. But what do you have at the top of it? A baboon. But I just showed you a mathematical instrument, right? I just showed you the significance of the baboon. But let me show you something that's going to blow your mind. So this was a research paper that was pulled out of the +1 journal called The Papio-Cranium from the Hominin Barren Site of Malapa. Implications for the evolution of modern baboon cranial morphology in South African Pleistocene biochronology. So this paper was published on August the 19th, 2015. And what it states is this. They unearthed a 2 million old baboon skull in Malapa, down in South Africa, north of Johannesburg. So, Brother Sai, this is telling you that the oldest baboon was found in South Africa. Baboons weren't indigenous to Kemet. Baboons are indigenous to the South. And just like the ancestors migrated out of the South, so did the baboon. So that's why you see baboons in Kemetic culture. You see it all through Kemetic culture because it came from the South. Again, it came from the South. So this is the second oldest mathematical instrument in the world. It's called the Ashango bone, and it could be found in the Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences. This Ashango bone is 20,000 years old, and it was found in the northeast region of the Congo, near the Virunga Park, and right in the Congo. And when you think about the Congo, especially the northeast region of the Congo, we're talking about the Great Lakes region or the East African Rift System. Now, this area was first excavated in the 1930s, 50s, and 59, and they found bones of Homo sapiens sapiens, harpoons, which are the little blades that you use for fishing, and they found corks tools. But the most fascinating discovery was the Ashango bone. This Ashango bone is a composite tool. And when you say composite tool, a tool made from two or more materials, it's a composite tool that was made of quartz and bone. And it has 168 parallel marks positioned in groups distributed on 3 sides of the handle. Okay?
All of the books written about Africans is by the conquerors and reflect their values and their viewpoint, not ours. So we have to reconnect and begin to write our own books. We have to reconnect and talk about our own spiritual education, not just from a European paradigm. Even today, books, curricula, teaching materials, and educational institutions are all founded on white capitalism, male, Greco-Roman, Judeo-Christian, Aryan, ruled by models, by their human models. And so we have to turn that around. And just like we've been looking at the world upside down, how we have been educated has been upside down. And so we have to take control of our educational system. We have been miseducated. And so we have to represent for ourselves. At the center has to be Maat. You see, Maat is not in their agenda. If you're stealing somebody's stuff, how are you going to talk about Maat? If you're killing the indigenous people and taking their land, how are you going to talk about Maat? So you can't talk about Maat. You have to talk about religion. And you notice the religion is doing the killing. More people have been killed in the name of religion than any man-made institution on the planet. Let me say that again. More people have been killed in the name of some religion than any institution man has incorporated. Right. And religion does not teach you good character. If I can take a machine gun and just wipe people out because they don't believe in what I believe in, what is that saying about your character? So Ma'at is truth, righteousness, justice, harmonious balance, reciprocity, and balance in all things. Here, these are 42 orals of Ma'at. And here, we see that before there was a Moses, there was Ma'at. And again, look at the proper spatial perspective of Africa. And that beautiful sister up on the top represents the image of Ma'at. And so we looked at Ma'at as this beautiful African feminine, universal feminine energy. How do we give honor and praise to the great ancestors? I always talk about 4 ways. We speak and write their name, the way they spoke and write their name. So therefore, we need to learn some Badu Netcha. We use and honor their great completed works. And that's what we're doing here now. That's what you see on these images here. This is their great and completed works. We need to be emulating that and using that in our life. And then we must complete their incompleted works. And that's what this little lecture is about. That's what the conference was about. We got work to do, people. We just can't ride on the wave that ancient Kemet was great. No, we got to become great again. That's right.
The ancient Egyptians, of course, were black. And I put this picture up there because it's so beautiful, with this sister with her locks. And they weren't called dreadlocks. Dread is a British word. The British didn't exist yet. The English language didn't exist yet, so they couldn't have been called dreadlock. Dread is a British word that means fear. And in Jamaica, where they encountered it in other parts of the Caribbean, the priest class that was waging war of independence out of slavery, they all wore their hair in locks then as they do in Africa today. And the British said, we dread the lock-haired ones. And from that, we got the dreadlocks. You know, but it was the white man saying we dread the lock-haired ones. But you can see the lock-haired ones was there from the beginning of time. And of course, we didn't have no comb or brush. Now, this is a painting from the tomb of Ramses III in 1200 BCE. It shows that the Egyptians perceived themselves as black and represented themselves as such without possible confusion with the Indo-European and the Semites. This is a representation of the races in minute detail, which guarantees the realism of the colors. Throughout the entire history, the Egyptian never dreamt of representing themselves by type B or D. This is B, the Asiatic type, and D, the European type. And this comes from the book by Sheikh Anta Diop, Civilization of Barbarism, by Sheikh Anta Diop on page 66. So the Egyptians saw themselves as black, and this is on the wall of the tomb. And they saw the rest of the Africans looking just like them, and it was just as them. They saw the Asiatic type or the Eurasian type looking like this, and they saw the European type looking like this. And they painted on the walls, and they left it there to this day. So let's not be confused anymore, wondering who's who and what was what.
We created perfect images and carvings and sculptures and paintings, statues, monuments, so that their likeness will be remembered for eternity. Now, Europeans do that. You almost can't go into a park without some white boy on a horse or something there saying, we discovered this. So they're taking our formula and using it for themselves. We have to use this formula for ourselves. But like I said, we have to define ourselves through our own image. Now, Brother Sanada asked first, a little earlier about the Chaldeans' work, wrote first. If you look here, this is an article from 1998 in the Daily News, New York Daily News. And it talks about Egyptians wrote first. And this is archaeologists of today telling you that the ancient Egyptians wrote first. I have a lot of stuff to go through, so I'm not going to go read this verbatim, but it lets you know that the first writing, this is before cuneiform, and cuneiform is abstract. In other words, if you don't know the culture, you can never learn cuneiform. Here, all you got to do is know nature, and you can learn it. So if you look to my right, I show you the Medu Neter, then I show you the hieratic. We had a cursive form, a printed form. Then I show you the Phoenicians. Then I show you how the Greeks, the Romans, and the Hebrews came in. Okay, so they're to come in last. We're their teachers. And let me just say something about, brother, in Sumeria, the ancient Sumerians were African people who set up that And they came also from ancient Kush. If you look at Monroe and all that, it says, in Nimrod, it says the children of Kush. The children of Kush. So even the founders of cuneiform.
Sumeria dates to 3000 BC.
Right. So Kemet is more than 1,000 years before Sumerian. And that's why they want to say that Egypt doesn't start to 3100, because they want to put them together.
Okay, so this is the Ashango bone. It consisted of 168 parallel marks positioned in groups distributed on 3 sides of the handle. So the handle consisted of 168 marks, and the person, the European brother, the European that found the bone, he postulated that each side represented a group. If you look at the middle The middle is a double. It represents groups of doubles. So if you look at 3, 3 plus 3 is 6. You look at 4, 4 plus 4. If you double 4, you get 8. If you double 5, you get 10. So it follows this pattern until you get to the last two numbers. If you look to the left column, it represents prime numbers. You have 11, 13, 17, and 19. And what is a prime number? A prime number is a number that's divisible by itself in 1. If you look at the right column, he speculated, or he postulated that the right column could be linked to a base 10. So if you look at 11 minus 1 is 10. 21 minus 1 is 20. 19 plus 1 is 20. 9 plus 1 is 10. So he postulated that these groups represented numbers. So I just showed you archaeological evidence that gives credence that rudimentary mathematical ideas were brought up from the South. So these ideas weren't brought from a Hebrew, a Greek, or an Arab, Brother Sai. These mathematical ideas were born in South Africa. They originated in South Africa. And just as the ancestors migrated out of South Africa, they brought with them not only their customs and traditions, but they also brought with them symbolic thought and mathematical thought. Okay?
This is another shot of they built a mosque on the Grand Lodge of Wasset. Now, if the Muslims are saying all of these things are profane and anti-Allah, why they built their sacred mosque right in the middle of it? Because certain people are slick enough to understand when you build on hollow ground. You build on sacred ground. And that's why that mosque, and it's still there today. You see this part of the temple right here? You can fit the Greek Parthenon in there about 8 or 9 times, if not more. And that's just one small piece of the temple. Let me show you. This is Brother Thutmose III Sphinx. Clearly you can see this is an African brother here. All right? Pharaoh of Kemet, 18th dynasty. This is Thutmose again. I just like to show him because we was out. Is that black enough for you? I mean, that's what we got to get with. They just trying to take our stuff. And so I just want to show you throughout our existence, it's all been black. This is the tomb of the noble. Noble Rekmar again, advisor under Thutmose. And I just wanted to show you that the Tekken is already a part of our cultural institutions. Well, I forgot what they use this as a plow, but you'll also see it used as a part of the masonry tools, which I'll show you later as we get down. When Thutmose jumped on the Hyksos and drove them out, these were our original borders. And then he took our borders all the way to the Tigris, Euphrates, all the way up to Turkey, over to Rome and Greece. He expanded the borders of Kemet. And that's when a lot of people began to learn about us and began to hear about us. He conquered all of what is the Mediterranean. This is Brother Thutmose III, you know. And then when we see the, let me see what space I want to talk about. Yeah. So each of these spaces, we got these darker spaces here. The rim shows you where he took the kingdom of Kemet and conquering after that first invasion. And so what we get here is showing the kingdoms that we have in relationships with during the Amarna period. That's throughout the 18th dynasty period, right? Throughout the period of Akhenaten and King Tut. And these are the Tekkens built by Thutmose. Remember these because these are very important symbol in Freemasonry. Any cemetery you go into America, when you see abundance of these, many of them have the Masonic symbol on them, you know that that's where the ruling elite of America is buried. And one is up on 233rd Street and Webster Avenue. Hundreds of them are there. And that was the ruling elite of New York.
So here's the Medu Neter alphabet. These are the letters. Not all symbols represent single letters. Some pictures represent words. The symbols that make up the alphabet in the Kemetic Medu Neter are subdivided into categories, including phonograms and ideograms. And I'll kind of explain that. Ideograms were used to write the word they represent. An example of an ideogram would be a picture of a woman that actually looks like a woman and represents the word woman. Phonograms were used to spell out the sound of a word and did not represent what it looked like. It was not related to the word. It was just there for the sound. As a result, symbols use both ideograms and phonograms, and the reader needs to determine the context of the sentence in order to find out which word was intended, to indicate whether a symbol represents a complete word or merely a sound scribes or a sound ascribed to that word. Scribes and priests of ancient Kemet were called sesh, and sesh hina him netcher. Young boys and sometimes young girls were of wealthy families, usually entered schools around the age of 6 or 7, and here they were, taught the Madu netcher. It wasn't hard. I mean, it wasn't easy. But the privileges of learning the Madu netcher was that if you became a scribe, you were exempt from taxes. If you became a scribe, you were also not required to enter military service. So you were exempt from that because, and you got a kind of a high status in the society.
So now I want to get into the mathematical basis of the Kemetic structure, showing you how they actually utilize mathematics to build these structures. Now, before I get into that, I want to show you, this is a diagram of Egypt. So I want you to note this, Brother Side, that all of the pyramids, or most of the pyramids, were built to the west side of the Nile. It was built on the western bank. They were built on the western bank of the Nile because remember, the sun rises in the east, it sets in the west. Sun rising, you equate that with life. Sun setting, they equated that with death. So all of the pyramids, the tombs, were built on the west side of the Nile. You had maybe one that was built on the east side of the Nile. But if you look at it from, and I'm gonna view it as the ancients do it, if you look at it from south to north, all of them are predominantly along the west side of the Nile. So what you're looking at is the step pyramid that was constructed during the third dynasty. So we're looking at 2630 to 2611 BCE, and the step pyramid is located in Saqqara, which is in lower Egypt. Remember how if northern Egypt is really lower Egypt and southern Egypt is really upper Egypt. So this pyramid is found in Saqqara, lower Egypt. Is that lower? No. You have lower Egypt and Saqqara. So that's the location of the step pyramid. The step pyramid is the world's first stone architectural project designed by the great Imhotep for the king Ausar. So it's the world's first stone architectural project. So the step pyramid, Brother Sai, it actually sits in a complex. It actually sits in a complex that's built of stone. And let me show you something. Prior to the step pyramid, our kings were buried in what's called mastaba tombs, which were mud bricks built on top of sarcophagus. So your coffin was down the bottom, and they built a mud brick, sort of like a roof, over top of your coffin. So if you look at the step pyramid it consists of 6 mastabas piled on top of each other.
This is Pharaoh Senusret, 12th dynasty. He found followed him to the throne. It's clear this is an African man. This is Pharaoh of Kemet. And I'm trying to show through this discussion is the Africanness of all of the dynasties. There is no such thing as no white folks running Kemet ever. Except where they invade us and took over our lands, but they weren't us. And we fought every day they were in our lands to get our lands back. So this is Senusret, the 12th dynasty. Pharaoh Nahesi, 13th dynasty. And then we ran into trouble. 1750 BC, the Hyksos invade Egypt. And in the Teft, this is the king of the Hyksos. And this is where they seem to have come from, somewhere in the Caucasus Mountains. And they made their way down the shoreline. This green area show the areas they're conquering as they come into lower Egypt, lower Kemet. I don't take the Pharaoh's hat. Be cool. And this is Pharaoh Nuperi. This is the 7th. He's the 17th dynasty. This is a dynasty while the Hyksos is ruling in the north, our dynasties and our country is still going on. So when people talk, they talk about the Hyksos invasion like they invaded all of Africa. No, they invaded the northern part of Kemet, the northern part of the Nile Valley. But in the meantime, Kemet still functioned. Kemet was still going on. And this is one of the pharaohs of that dynasty. And I just threw this in, a Hyksos woman with her baby on her back. Because one thing we see about the Hyksos, they were a mixed racial group. They were not a European, straight out European grouping. So, yeah, and when you get serious about this, you got to check out the Hebrew thing, because 1700 BC is about the time they said Abraham came into the Nile Valley. Well, he must have came in with the Hyksos, because that's when they invaded the Nile Valley.
All right, mixed on top of each other. So they knew that this pyramid was designed for King Ausar, because on the northern face of the step pyramid, you have a sardab. It's called a sardab, which is sort of like a stone cubicle that sits on the northern face. And inside of this cubicle, on the outside of this cubicle, you have two holes. And when the archaeologists looked inside of the two holes, they saw a statue, a life-size statue of a king. And down the bottom, on the bottom of the statue, the bottom of the statue was called the horse name of the king, and the horse name is Negereket. And they have linked Negereket with King Ausar.
Here we get a chance to look at what I was talking about. Down the middle of the page, it says, and we can see it's written from right to left. We can see the direction of the cobra. So it says, De Ankh Mi Ra Jet. Give life like Ra for eternity. And you can see the Medu Necher to our left. It says, Weben Ra Im Aket. Rise, Ra, in the horizon. And then Sebiat is the teaching. The Seba is a teacher. And then down below you see a Shin. And you see these writings. So we'll get into it. If you look all the way down to the bottom, you'll see a male and a female. Se means man. So the determinative is a little man. Sat means woman. And the determinative is a little woman at the bottom. So again, you get a chance to see. In the center in black, you see the words for, it says Sinwi, which means the two brothers. And then you see Sunet T, or Sun T, the two ladies. Yeah, right in there.
But that's a discussion you need to have with our Hebrew brothers and sisters. They need to get serious about this history. This is Queen Ahotep I. She ruled Egypt with her husband Pharaoh Sequeneri Tau between 1590 to 1530 BC. They led the fight to drive the Hyksos invaders out. And this was a bad brother here, but his sons was bad. This is Chemos, who began the heavy war against the Hyksos. And this is his brother, Pharaoh Amos I, who continued that war against the Hyksos invaders. Then Pharaoh Thutmose, who's the grandson of the first brother I showed. Pharaoh Thutmose defeats the Hyksos and drives them out of Egypt. And this one, the baddest warrior in the history. We see Ramses as being a very bad warrior and a tough brother, but this little brother right here, he kicked ass and didn't take any names. And so it's very important to study his history. And this is Amos Nefertari. This is the wife of Thutmose I. This is the tomb of Senefere, who was the mayor of Thebes under Amenhotep II. And I just wanted to show you the magnificent work that's being done in one of these tombs back in that day. This is all underground. These people who build these things had to be scientists. They knew geometry. They had to know trigonometry to get the stuff up and down those long stairs. They had to know algebra because of the pieces and the parts and the unknowns that had to be calculated and measured. So the arithmetic, the mathematics, the geometry, and the science necessary. And forget about the chemistry. The chemistry is off the hook because the colors are still there thousands of years later. So that's how our chemistry was tight. That meant we were well learned, well studied for centuries, thousands of centuries. Again, Amenhotep I, the son of Amos Nefertari, and the brother of Mutanofret, and the second pharaoh of the 18th dynasty. Next is Amenhotep II, or Thutmose III, and then Amenhotep III, who's the father of Akhenaten. I just wanted to show you and see how black they are. They sculpt these things while they were alive. They tell you what they look like. You don't need nobody to draw nothing or to put somebody in a movie. They're showing you, you don't get no blacker than this.
And they knew that Imhotep Imhotep was the designer of the pyramid, because they also found inside of the pyramid a pedestal with Negerket's name on it and Imhotep's name beside it. So that's how they determined who designed the Great Pyramid. The Step Pyramid. So let's get into a little bit of the astronomical science surrounding the Great Pyramid. Now, I drew this diagram, by the way, Brother Sai, but you're looking at the Step Pyramid on a grid showing the north, south, east, or west, so the four cardinal points. And the pyramid faces the true north, but it's shy of the true north by 4 degrees and 3 arch minutes. So 4 degrees and 3 arch minutes. So a lot of Egyptologists and archaeologists felt like that this was an error because it wasn't facing the true north, as what they call it. And when they say the true north, they're talking about the northern celestial pole. So they're saying that it didn't exactly face the northern celestial pole. So they thought that this 4-degree azimuth was a mistake. But now you have astronomers now saying that this was not a mistake, and that the Egyptians were very precise, and that this structure probably was not orientated to the northern celestial pole, but actually orientated to a particular star in the celestial pole. And there's a program by the name of Starry Night Pro, which will tell you exactly what the sky looked at a particular time and in a particular position.
Yeah, you'll see the determinatives pointing out at the end. See, behind the brothers, you see a male, and behind the women, you see a little female. Okay, this is making sure. And then look below that, you see Tawi, the 2 lands right there. That's Tawi. So in ancient Kemet, we had singular tense, we had a dual tense, and we had a plural tense. So plural in ancient Kemet was 3 or more. Dual was just 2. We understood dual. See, we don't have that in English and in the European world. Dual mean in and out is all part of one. Up and down, all part of one. Male and female, all part of one. So we had a dual text. This shows that our connection to nature, much more complex. The Kemetic spiritual system of deep thought, these are the things that need to be mastered. So people who are trying to teach themselves are going to have some difficulty. So let me just break this down. You need to learn the alphabet. That's monosyllabic signs. Then you need to learn syllabic signs. That's biliterals and triliterals. That's one sign that has more than one sound. Then you need to learn complements. Complements have to be letters in the alphabet that explain the sound in biliterals and triliterals. And then determinatives. Determinatives come usually at the end of a word and tries to explain the nature of the word. What category does it belong to? Like if somebody say, let's play ball. At the end, they would put a little football so you know what kind of ball we were playing. That's what a determinative does. Then you have to know numerical principles, numbers and adjectives. And so people learn to count in the Medu Netra, like Wa, Sanu, Shemut, Fadu, Diu, Sasu, Safekiyu, Kemenu, Pasejiu. And then 10 base. The word 0 is Nefer. And then Maju, then Jabati, then Maba, Hamo, Diuiyu, Sasuiyu, Safekiyu, Kemenuiyu, Pasejiyu, Shot. Then the thousands, Ka. And it goes up to 1,000,000, Neha. So we have to learn, my students, every number they can say in English, they can say in the Medu Netra. A lot of times they just use strokes. So if you look in the right-hand corner there, you'll see the strokes representing the numbers.
Over here?
Over here, right. No, right, yeah, right there.
Okay.
This is a scene, excuse me, that, yeah, I could use a little water. This scene comes from the wall of a temple in the Sudan, and this predates the what we call the dynastic period in Kemet. There's a kingdom in the Sudan called Karma. It is a civilization that loaned itself to the civilization that would expand and become Kemet. So before there was a Kemet in the north, there was this civilization already functioning for thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of years earlier in the south. You see the leopard skin across the arm symbolizing that this is the priest. They're bringing wealth and gold and symbols. You can see that we weren't just brown today. We were black then and brown then. We didn't get brown because of the white man. We were brown and black from the earliest time. The brownness came out of our blackness. And so we ought to be clear when we play with ourselves in these conversations about who we are. And so I won't go deep into karma, but we need to learn more about the ancient civilization in Sudan. I'll be going to Sudan this summer. I'll be visiting Karma for about a week and the great Temple Mount Jabril in the Sudan. Hopefully I can get some good photographs to come back with. Abydos, the oldest city of Upper Egypt, 5,000 to 3,100 BC. Now I put this enormous temple there because when this Abydos is built with these beautiful, powerful temples, with these powerful pillars, there is no Greece yet. There is no Rome yet. There's no Ionic civilization. There is no Doric civilization. This is just the black folks being black folks doing a black thing about black folks. So we didn't borrow this concept of the pillar temple from the Greeks because there is no Greeks yet.
Okay, so now you're looking at the step pyramid complex, a picture of it. So again, the step pyramid was surrounded by a complex. Well, it sits inside of a complex and it's surrounded by a wall. Now, the surface area of the step pyramid is 545 by 277 meters. It consisted of 13 fake doorways, a colonnade entrance to the southwest end. But I want to point your attention to this. The west side and east side of the complex had 1,461 panels. That was on the west side. On the east side, you had 1,458 panels. Now, I want to speak a little bit about the significance of this number. When you think of the number 1,461 or 1,460, you think of the Solthic cycle. Now, the Solthic cycle is the amount of years that it takes for the calendar to coincide with the rising of the Sirius star. So the Egyptians, what they did, Brother Sai, was that their calendar was based, or their year was based on the rising of the Sirius star. And every 4 years, that the rising is delayed. And after 1,461 years, the rising begins to coincide with the calendar year, or the beginning of the calendar year again. So essentially, the west side and east side of the step pyramid complex represented years. Now, if you look at the south side and the north side, both of them consisted of 732 panels. When you think of the number 732, you can break that down to 366 times 2. When you think of 366, you're thinking of the leap year. 365 days on a leap year, 366 days. So the south side and north side of the step pyramid complex were the days. So the west side and east side counted years. The north side and south side counted days. Now we're looking at the Great Pyramid, which was constructed during the 4th dynasty. So this structure was produced or built approximately 100 years after the step pyramid, and it's located in Giza. Again, we're talking about Lower Egypt, south of Cairo.
People, all the complex mathematical problems you're going to see later was all done in the Medu Neter. You can't do mathematical problems with Roman numerals. They're only good for chapters in a book, and a clock. This is a continuation. The study of African culture and ethnic groups. We need to study them, not just in the valley, but all the way to the south and west. The study of indigenous African spiritual systems. We need in-depth study of Kemetic festivals, celebrations, and holidays. We need to study African folklore, stories, and proverbs. Study astronomy, astrology, numerology, the Kemet calendar. We need in-depth and study of the Neteru, and I'll be talking about the Neteru. So people, this is just a black print to be a blueprint to help you study the Medu Neter. A lot of people get lost when it comes to grammar. They don't want to learn the grammar. We lose them right there. Once we learn the grammar, that's just like learning how to fish if you were a fisherman. Instead of me giving you fish, I teach you how to fish. When you learn the grammar, now you can learn to read this for yourself.
And we didn't borrow this from the Romans because there was no Romans yet. None of them exist yet. There's still barbarians in the mountains of the Caucasus Mountains and other parts of Europe. This I wanted to show the enormity of the Grand Temple or the Grand Lodge of Waset. Look at this thing. It starts here. This is one complex. You could take the Parthenon and fit it in here 20, 30 times. Yet they stick this little Parthenon, this little square with some pillows up on a hill. But this thing you can see is 1 block, 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 to 5 city blocks long, if not longer. And you can see it expanded beyond itself. If you can see, there's a small group of little pillars here. This is where the Greek built something, trying to build something after they conquered Kemet. And this little mess that they built fell down already. This is what our ancestors built thousands of years before they got there. You know, and all of this is a part of the complex. And then if you came out the front door and walked for a mile, you would get into the great Karnak temple, which is bigger, even bigger than this one. And the whole complex itself was called Ipet Isut, which was the university complex in which our people learned the 7 liberal arts, which we had invented long before there was a white man. We invented the 7 liberal arts. You know, that's reading, writing, geometry, arithmetic, rhetoric, music, and I'm missing one. But it'll come. So here we are. When this is built, there's no white man. There's no Greece. There's no England. There's no France. There's no Rome. There's no Christianity. None of this. There's no Judaism. There's, algebra is a part of it. But that's not one of the 7.
Oh, okay.
Algebra fits under arithmetic. Okay. So, but we already had algebra because if you go to the Rhine Mathematic Papyrus, you see I think it's problem 16 or one of them showed that we were solving problems with 2 or more unknowns. And when you're dealing with solving a problem with 2 or more unknowns, you're talking about algebra. Of course, they would later name the concept after some Arab. This is another beautiful temple, the Pharaoh Hatshepsut Burial Temple and Deir el-Bahir. This temple is built right out of the mountain. You couldn't do this today. The engineering feat to carve this facility out of the side of this mountain is absolutely extraordinary. And the science and the math and the geometry and the trigonometry and the algebra that you would need to do this is enormous. And there's no computers. And with computers, they couldn't replicate this. And Sister Hatshepsut was not the first female pharaoh. She just became one of the most famous ones. Shoshenq I of the 22nd dynasty is thought to be the biblical Shishak mentioned in the Book of Kings. And you can see this is a statue of him. They mention him in the Book of the Kings. You can see this is a young African pharaoh, the leader of the greatest nation on earth at that time, the nation we call today Kemet. And this is Pharaoh Taharqa, son of Shabaka, succeeds in driving the Assyrian invaders out of Egypt. He's the only pharaoh mentioned, I should say mentioned by name in the Bible. And this is Taharqa mentioned in the book of Isaiah. And in the Torah, in the book of Isaiah, they talk about a chronicling about this king named Taharqa. And they have Isaiah, their prophet, referring to him to the other Israelites, that he is king of Egypt and all the world. That's deep. In the Bible, king of Egypt and all the world. And for the Israelite not to get in this path trying to play any guerrilla warfare with them, because he was going to drive the Assyrian invaders out of the land and save the Israelis. The Israelites. They didn't call themselves Israelites. People got skip over that. Oh, they skip over anything that's black. And as you can see, this is a young black man. He could be right there on 141st Street and 7th Avenue walking around. But then he was the Pharaoh of Egypt. In Deuteronomy, on the 4th chapter 9 from the New International Version of their Bible, it says, only be careful and watch yourself closely so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live, meaning your history. That's the things your eyes have seen. Teach them to your children and to their children after them. So how dare these people tell us not to teach our history, not to teach black history, not to teach African history, when the very book they claim they're worshiping tell them to do just that.
Now, this Giza pyramid consisted of 3 major pyramids. You had Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. And it consisted in Menkaure, right beside Menkaure, you had queen pyramids that were also called satellite pyramids. Now, I want you to take a good look at the alignment of these Giza pyramids and check out the alignment of Orion's belt. You have the Orion's belt, which consists of the delta, epsilon, and the zeta. So look at the alignment, and look at the alignment of Orion's belt. Dr. Robert Bauval, I think in 1994, proposed the correlation theory. He brought out the fact that the Orion's belt, which is right here to my right, is highly correlated with the alignment of the Giza pyramids. So basically, the Giza pyramids are an earthly model of the Orion's belt, and he brought that out in 1994. Now, this Giza pyramid is actually built on top of a mound with a subterranean chamber. So in Egypt, it was common to build structures on top of structures. So this was actually built on an older structure. And I want you to pay attention to these parameters because we're really getting ready to get into the math. The height was 481 during antiquity. Right now, it's approximately 455 feet. But during antiquity, the height of the Great Pyramid was 481 feet. The base was 756 feet. And this was aligned to the true north. And again, brothers and sisters, when they say that the pyramid is aligned with the true north, what they're telling you is that it's aligned with the northern celestial pole. But the scientists have said that it was misaligned by 1/12 of a degree due to a shift in the Earth's crust. But again, this may not be a misalignment. This may be that they aligned it to a specific star within the northern celestial pole. It consisted of 2.3 million stones weighing an average between 2 to 70 tons. In Herodotus' work, he reported that 100,000 men built this monument in a span of 20 years. So now let's get into the mathematical basis of the Great Pyramid. In Anthony T. Browder's work, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilizations, on page 106 to 107, he states this: dividing the perimeter of the pyramid's base by twice its height yields 3.1428, which is a working approximation of pi, often used by contemporary engineers in construction. So what he is asserting is that the Egyptians had a working approximation of pi. So he's saying that they understood pi. Well, what is pi, brothers and sisters? Pi is the ratio of the circle's circumference to its diameter. So when you think of a circumference is nothing but a length. So you're basically saying that it's the ratio of the circle's length, aka circumference, to its diameter. And you know that the diameter is the distance from one side of the circle to the next. So he's saying that this ratio is pi, and if you understand mathematics, you'll know that pi is constant for any circle. Now, in order for his statement to be true, the base of the Great Pyramid would have to be a square whose perimeter is equal to the circumference of a circle with a radius equal to the height of the Great Pyramid.
Now, Canaan, the land that they call Palestine or Israel today, this is Canaan, the god El, and a Canaanite woman. Is that black enough for you? You know, and look at the God. Is he black enough for you? And this is the God of the Canaan people before the crackle, and they lie to us and tell us like they don't know who the Canaanites were. These some exile Hebrew musician relief from Nineveh, 678 BC. I hope you can see it well enough that these are clearly African men with these nose and these lips, and they're wearing their hair in the locks. And then we go to the next one. These are ancient Hebrews being taken into captivity by the Assyrians from the palace wall at Sennacherib. And this is from 680 BC. Again, you can see the Assyrians are white. They got long hair, And then you can see the Hebrew captives have nappy, little round, dotty hair. So, that is a group of Africans. We can go into detail, but I think Brother Reggie and them have handled that very well. I'll leave that to Brother Polite. But I just wanted to show you the symbol that just like the Moors were black people, the Hebrews were black people, the nation of Kemet were black people, the nation of Karma were black people, and now crackers have begun to seep down into our land with their war machines, and we're getting captured. An Ethiopian Hebrew today living in Ethiopia. You can see how she looks. And this I put this up. This is the Temple of Solomon. That's supposed. This is only an artist's recreation of what this temple must have looked like. I put it up because these two pillows in front is the symbol of all Masonic lodges in the world. You will not walk in a Masonic lodge except that you walk between the two symbols. And I'm not supposed to be at liberty to tell you what the symbols are, but you can go in any good research on the internet and find Masonic lodges and see that they're replicated from these things. Now this is the Queen Makeda, or who they call the Queen of Sheba. This is one of the oldest pictures I can find, and wherever you find a picture of her, she's always painted as a black woman. This is the ruins, supposed to be the ruins of the Queen of Sheba, or the palace of Makeda in Ethiopia, that's being excavated. By now, they should be finished with the excavation. I did have the opportunity to visit this site and walk through this site. It's a massive site. And it is good our people to begin to do the archaeological work necessary to excavate our ancient history.
Now, this is why we're upside down, inside, and backwards. We are depending upon somebody else just to define our stuff. All the words here you see at the left are words or European words describing an African phenomena. Egypt, no Egypt, Kemet. So I show you Kemet, how it was written. No Pharaoh, it's a Nasut Biti. In yellow there, I show you the words. No Cartouche, it's a Shin, an elliptical serpent. No hieroglyphics, it's the Madu Necha. No Sphinx, it's Haru Im Aketi. No Nile, it was the Hapi Itiru. No mummy, it's the Sahu. No pyramid, it's the Mirkut. And no gods, it was the Necharu. So we have to, and these Necharu are principles and laws. Principles and laws. So here we get a good example of seeing some of the Necharu. Up to the top, it shows you that each of the rulers from the first golden age on had at least 5 names. The first name at the top is their Haru name. Then they had a Nepti name. That means they were master of upper and lower Kemet, protecting the femininity and the nation. Then there were golden Haru names, meaning that they would never perish. And the mere fact we're still talking about it means it's true. Then they had their Nasut Biti name, and that's the first name inside of a Shin. And that has the B in the sledge there. And then finally the Sarah name, which would mean the son of the sun.
All right, gotcha.
Okay. So here you can see the writing written in both directions towards the bottom. So you can see Sarah going to the right, and then if you look, you see Sarah going to the left, right in here. We must learn to read the Madu Necha. Here I am in ancient Kemet. I'm reading the Madu Necha. I don't have no white Arab guy telling me what the wall says. We telling him what the wall says, and he's taking notes. Spiritual system of ancient Kemet. In ancient Kemet and Kash, the Kemetic believed in one creator, the spiritual consciousness and of all things. The one creator, divine principle and laws were called Necharu, and the worship of the Necharu was part of an everyday life. As with all civilizations, the spiritual system was linked to mythology and spiritual revelations. Much of the spiritual belief centered around the heaven and the earth and the Hapi Itiru. That's the Kemetic spiritual practice were linked to celestial movements, constellations of the sun, Ra, and the moon, Ea, and the planets, which in turn guided the mythologies in the way of life, so as above, so below. So that's where we get this concept from, ancient Kemet. So is above, so below. So we built our cities in relationship to what was going on in the heavens. You are not separated from the whole. Nature. You are one with nature, the creator of the cosmos. Jehuti is the voice. Now, Jehuti is not a god. Jehuti is the voice of the Necharu, and he represents your higher consciousness. You are one with the galaxy. Maat, harmonious balance and order. You are one with the solar system. Shu, Tefnut, boundless space and moisture. You are one with Ra, the sun. You are one with Ea, the moon. You are one with Geb and Nut, the planet and the livable atmosphere. You have a life, Ankh. You are life. You don't have a life. You are a life. Spirituality is not religion. Being spiritual just means you are in touch with your own divine self. And I have to emphasize, you are divine.
So what I did was I wanted to prove this. So what I did was I set P, the perimeter of the base. So this square would represent the base. And so this square, no, it's cool. So this square, so the perimeter would be this square. This triangle represents the pyramid. The square represents the perimeter or the base of the pyramid. So I set the perimeter, which is the base of the pyramid, equal to C, and C is equal to 2 pi r, where r is equal to the height of the pyramid. Okay, so if you solve for pi, right, that's kind of easy. You divide each side by 2h or 2r, where r is equal to h. So p is divided by 2h. And if you plug in the numbers, remember on the previous side, I stated that the that the base was 700. Let me go back. Okay, so that the base is 756 feet. So we plug in the base, and since it's the perimeter, you have to multiply the base times 4. And then the height, as I stated in the previous slide, is 481 feet. You do the math, and you get that pi is equal to 3.1428. So our ancestors not only knew how to calculate pi, but they built a structure based on pi equaling 3.1428. Now, this was very powerful, brothers and sisters, because a lot of the credit for pi and even the Pythagorean theorem goes to either Babylonian mathematicians or Greek mathematicians. But if you look, Brother Sai, in Sheikh Andy Diop's work, he states that the Babylonians calculated pi to equal 3. We calculated pi to be 3.1428, but we don't get credit for it. They give the credit to the Greeks. But building this structure demonstrates that our ancestors had a working understanding of algebra and geometry, because in order to solve for these variables, you had to understand algebra. In order to align something with a celestial body, you had to understand geometry. So they understood algebra and they understood geometry. Now, this is some more math on the Great Pyramid. The pyramid's design is also in accordance with phi, known as the golden ratio. Now, phi is actually equal to the hypotenuse divided by the base. So it's the ratio of the hypotenuse to the base. I did another proof, and I state this. This is true when you use the ratio of the slanted height to 1/2 the base. So this is S, the slanted height. 1/2 the base would be R. Okay, so again, phi is the hypotenuse to the base. S would be considered, this is the hypotenuse of the triangle, and R is the base. So we're solving for the ratio of S to R, all right? But in order to get this, we had to solve for S first. Now, since S is the hypotenuse, we know that S is equal to the square root of 8 squared plus R squared. We know that H is equal to 481. We know that R is equal to, now we're using 1/2 times the base. So we know that 1/2 is 0.5 times the base, which is 756. We square these terms. We take the square root. We get 611.755. Okay. And if you divide 611.755 by R, right, which is the radius, you will get phi. So you're saying, Dr. Mayat, so what the hell does this mean? Okay, the pyramid's design was in accordance with phi. What does that mean? That means that the face of this pyramid is an isosceles triangle. And when you say that something is an isosceles triangle, you're saying that the sides are equal on each side, and because the sides are equal, the angles of the sides are also equal. So that's an isosceles triangle. An isosceles triangle has 2 equal sides and at least 2 equal angles. So the pyramid's design was in accordance with phi. Now, in order to solve for S, I just want to make a note, Brother Side, to your viewers. They had to understand the triplets, C squared, A squared, and B squared of the Pythagorean theorem.
We came up against animals. We came up against people who came out of war cultures. We came up against people who didn't love human life, who didn't believe in the divineness of the human being. And for the want of things, for the want of some gold, for the want of some wheat or barley, they were willing to murder human beings. So they came upon us with a war culture and the war machine with spears and arrows and swords, things we didn't yet have. We would get those things and go back at them, but we would never become as good a killers as they are, because their value on human life versus our value on human life is completely different. And that's why they just came in and slaughtered men, women, and children. That was something we couldn't do. You know, in the war, even when Brother Ramses and Brother the brother of Hatshepsut, even when they took the war all the way back to Turkey, they gave them peace. It's okay, we done whipped your ass now. Stay home in your land with your people in peace. We're going to even give you some food and other things if you're hungry, and that's why you come to fight us. But we came up against a culture of murderers. We came up against a culture of rapists, a culture of barbarians. If there's a good book, Michael Bradley, The Iceman Inheritance, we must all read that book because he talks about who the white man really is. This is a guy, when he's in the cave during the Ice Age, when the snow came and he couldn't find no food, he ate his women. He ate his women. And there's proof of this, because the human bones, the female human bones found in the cave had female human teeth marks in them. So they ate the old women first, and when they ran out of old women, they ate the other women. That's why they were screwing each other in the butt, to find pleasure, instead of having pleasure out of the beauty of a female. And so when we're looking at a culture of animals, a culture of barbarians, they have cleaned up because they've learned so much from those things I showed you in our culture. They've learned so much from us on how to clean themselves, wash themselves, use soap, dress right. But that behavior, that hasn't changed. That's why he's still making nuclear bomb and neutron bomb and biological weapons and shooting us down in the street and killing our sisters in the prison and all these things. The same barbarian is still in the head. It just looks different today. That's why we lost. But we haven't lost. The degree to which we lost is the degree to which the fear have us wanting to be like them. The fear of them having us wanting to be like them. When we learn about our own history, when we learn about our own divinity, and we lose the fear of dying and lose the fear of them and stop wanting to be like them, they will die. They're only 1/9 of the world's population. They only live because we are sucking at their titties and have them sucking at ours. When we stop that process, they will die. Matter of fact, all white nations, America included, right now is at minus birth rate, meaning more of their people are dying from natural death than they can give natural birth to. That's why they have so many pills and machines and all kinds of giving these artificial birth, adopting and kidnapping other people's children to infuse their blood system with melanin to keep themselves going. But we need to just pull away. We need to stop trying to imitate them. Stop trying to be like them. We're going to be better murderers than them, better dope dealers than them, better profanity than them, better killers than them. Then how can we kill them if they have become us? And so that's what the spiritual warfare we're in now is about. That's what this discussion is about, is that our spirituality should trump their barbarism.
The nature of the cosmos, Maat. So if you can see, this woman here is depicted as Maat with the feather, ostrich feather on the head, says, I rose from justice of the universe, of Kush, and spread my wings across the land of Africa. And when I flapped them, civilizations was established. I am the balance and the harmony of the universe. I am truth itself. I am Kushite, Kemetic, spiritual science. From mathematical perfection of my order, the Creator created creation. I am the mathematical balance of order in both the material and the immaterial universe. I am the law of nature. I am the law of physics. I am the law of harmony. I am the law of supreme being. I am the mother and daughter of Amin-Ra. I am his substance. I am Maat. So it wasn't like Moses going up to Mount Sinai, getting the 10 Commandments, and coming back down. No, it's a divine order. How did the Remech or the Kemetic look at themselves? Now, this is important. People need to see this. These are pictures directly from the wall. The color has not been touched up. This is how we looked at ourselves. If you see up to the top left, that's the Supreme Council during the time of Mentuhotep. That's the so-called 11th dynasty. If you look, you see the dancers of the ladies wearing locks and braids. If you look, that's Tutankhamun, all the way to the right, as a young boy coming out of the lotus flower. Right. Below that, you see the king, the Nasut Biti. And again, right there, and Haru and Inpu giving him energy and life. In the center, you see the Nasut in his Hemet Nasut Weret. We didn't have queens. We had the Hemet, great royal wife or great divine royal mother.
Okay, we didn't have queens.
No, queens is the whore of the king.
Oh, man.
Okay, so
I heard that before.
Yes, okay. And you see, he's smelling the blue lotus.
That's right.
That's opening up his consciousness so that he's on the same level. And over here, it's almost like the one to the right. We see Inpu, and we see the great feminine energy giving the ruler the power to image, the power to rule.
That life.
Right, giving him life.
Now, we know, Brother Sai, that the Greeks came in to Africa and they studied at our feet. I think Pythagoras, if I'm not mistaken, spent 13 years. I don't know if he was the one that spent 13 years or 22 years, but I know he spent a lot of time in Egypt studying under the priests. But I want to make a note that Pythagoras is not the author of C squared equals A squared plus B squared, even though that is what's taught in public school systems. It was actually produced by the Egyptians. However, I want to read this. When I did a quick Google on the Pythagorean theorem, it says there is debate whether the Pythagorean theorem was discovered once or many times in many places, and the date of the first discovery is uncertain, as is the date of the first proof. According to Joran Freeberg, a historian of mathematics, evidence indicates that the Pythagorean theorem was well known to the mathematicians of the first Babylonian dynasty. But look at the dates, Brother Sai. The 20th to the 16th centuries BC. But wait a minute, Brother Sai. I just showed you a structure, right, that was built in 2589 BCE that precedes the first Babylonian dynasty. So they're giving all of the credit to the Babylonian dynasty, when in actuality we built a structure based on solving the triplets of the Pythagorean theorem. So the mathematical foundations of the structures attest that its creators had a working knowledge of algebra, geometry, trigonometry, astronomical science, because they aligned these monuments with celestial bodies, mechanics, material science, and physics. Now, I'm getting ready to touch on the mechanics, material science, and physics, because they had to understand mechanics, material science, and physics in order to create a ramp system that would maneuver these 2-ton blocks. So now I'm getting ready to get into the building methods of Kemet and how they actually, how did they build these structures? Because again, Brother Sai, there's a lot of misinformation out there regarding this. People say that the aliens did it, that they weren't equipped to move 2-ton blocks, but that's a lie, family.
The ancient city of Aksum in Ethiopia, it is in this complex here that this thing that the so-called Hebrews call the Ark of the Covenant, was they can't produce for nobody. The Ethiopians said they can't produce it because we got it. And each of the Ethiopian temples, this is another picture of that the modern part of that temple. And this is a close-up of the temple where they say this ark is being kept. There's a big electric fence around all of this, which we can't see in the photos, and soldiers with machine guns and stuff that guards us. So they got something up in there that they're not letting the world into. And in each of their temples, their churches, what they call their mother churches, they have a replica of that ark in the Holy of Holies, where only the priests can go. I put this here because we wanted to look at it again, refamiliarize ourselves, especially because tomorrow is going to be Good Friday. And last week you had Palm Sunday. And next Sunday you're going to have Easter. So this is the original African mother and child. This is the Ethiopian version of the black mother and child. And this is what we got coming out of Europe, the white mother and child, which have now been imposed on the whole world through the barrel of a gun. In the history of Christianity in ancient Africa, St. Catherine's Monastery in Egypt, which is south of Sinai, is 335 AD. You remember, it's 325 AD when they come up with the Bible, right? When they start writing the Bible, they really don't come up with it for another 70 years or so. So here's this monastery, which is already there, and they don't even have a Bible yet. So what's this about? What are they teaching then? So they're teaching the same Kemetic body of information, and they're breaking it down to fit this modern people that have now invaded our lands via the invasion of first the Hyksos, 1700 BC, then the Hittites, and then following the Assyrians, and then that's following the Persians, and then that's followed by the Greeks, and that's followed by the Romans. Well, none of them ever go back home after being defeated, so the remnants of these people are now in our land, and our elders and priests is trying to interpret our body of knowledge in a format to teach it to these invaders' children who are now being born and grown up in our land for centuries. You know? And then there's another great building, the ancient Coptic church, and the elders, which is the eldest of all Christian church. Now, the ancient Coptic church today is headquartered in Egypt. And I'm going to show you something on the next slide that should help your mind understand. The ancient Coptic church came about when Constantine called the Nicene Conference and called many of the brothers who was teaching this African spiritual wisdom together that was now under the Roman invasion and domination to try to put together a document that would be common for the entire Roman empire. And that document comes out to be what we call the Bible today. And according to the Pope before this Pope, 7 of the 10 men writing that document were Africans. And so the Coptic church, a brother named Arius and his followers, break away from that discussion in Nicaea that Constantine is having because they disagree with the notion that Jesus is the Son of God and born to the earth and God came down and walked as a man. They said that was ridiculous. They disagreed with that. Their concept was that all human beings have the potentiality of the divinity. And so they escape and they go back, they make it back to Egypt. Arius, their leader, will be murdered later on, but the movement that becomes known as the Coptic Church continues till this day. Now this is the Coptic Church, Christ and his disciples being depicted as African. This is one of the oldest paintings of Christ and his disciples anywhere in the world, and it is in the Coptic Museum in Cairo. So just spend a little minute marinating on that since this Easter thing is popping up. So here's how the Africans, before the Bible was even finished being written, depicted their teacher, who the West would later call the Christ, and depicted those who were the disciples of that teacher who would carry on his teachings. And this is in the museum, the Coptic Museum in Cairo. You can go see it today. There is no white painting of Christ yet anywhere in the world. There's no white painting of the Last Supper or disciples anywhere in the world for another 500 years. This is another picture from the Coptic Museum. This is the conception by righteous Anne. Anne is the most holy mother of the God. Saint Anna is the mother of the Virgin Mary and was the youngest daughter of the priest Nathan from the Bethlehem, descended from the tribe of the Levites, And the Levites, of course, these are the people who were the priest class. And so in the African picture, there ain't no white version of Jesus yet anywhere in the world. In the Coptic Museum, this is Jesus, the black man with his fro, and this is his grandmama. okay, Anne. And he's giving her a hug. And this is how African is painting their metaphorical representation of their teacher before the crackers take it and turn it into their thing. And you can go to Cairo today, you can go to the Coptic Museum today, and you can see these paintings and many, many others. I thought this was such a beautiful scene. This is Ethiopian Christians celebrating, I think, the coming of spring, which the West call Easter. And so I just thought it was such a beautiful piece, them doing this, because when they're doing their thing, there is no Catholic Church yet. There is no Protestant church yet. There's no Luther Reformation yet. You understand what I'm saying? There's no Methodist, there's no Baptist, there's no Episcopal, there's no Catholic. None of that stuff exists, and yet we are celebrating this tradition, which goes back to ancient Kemet, and the metaphor that's expressed by Haru and his mother Aset, metaphorical mother Aset and father Ausar, which comes from the pyramid text story of the beginning of creation.
That's a lie. So I'm getting ready to get into the building methods of Kemet and how they actually moved these 2-ton blocks or these 10-ton blocks. What you're looking at right here is a wall painting in the ancient tomb of Jehudi Hotep, which is dated to 1900 BCE. All right. So this right here is an actual facsimile of the wall painting. But let me give you a better view. So this is a cleaned up view of what you're looking at. This is a cleaned up view. And what it shows, it depicts 172 men hauling an immersed statue using ropes attached to a sledge. In the drawing, you can see a person. Brother Sal, look at this right here. Okay? So you have 172 men hauling a statue on a sled. And you have these men hauling it while this person is pouring something on the sand. You see that? Now, this picture was in a tomb, 1900 BCE. So this is giving archaeologists and scientists an idea as to how they maneuvered heavy materials. This paper is written in the physical review letters entitled Sliding Friction on Wet and Dry Sand. And what these authors did, this is a very, very powerful paper. Anyone who is interested in understanding how the Egyptians moved these 2-ton blocks should get this paper. It's again published in the Physical Review Letters. The publication date is May the 2nd, 2014. And the title is Sliding Friction on Wet and Dry Sand. So what these physicists did was investigate the effect of different amounts of water on the sliding friction of a variety of sands by measuring the force necessary to pull the sled. So they were pouring water. The assertion is this, brother Sai, is that they were pouring water onto the sand to decrease the friction, which would allow them to pull a sled that was weighted down by a statue or a block. Okay, so what they did in this paper was this: they computed what's called a friction coefficient. A friction coefficient. What is friction? Friction is resistance. So they computed what's called a friction coefficient, and they computed something called a shear modulus. A shear modulus is a coefficient that measures the stiffness of a material. Okay, and what they saw was this: that the friction coefficient and the shear modulus are inversely proportional. And I'm getting ready to explain what the friction and the shear modulus is. So this is so in layman's terms, brother Sai, when you pour water onto the sand, capillary bridges, okay, liquid membranes created between two bodies. So when you pour water onto the sand, capillary bridges form. And when these capillary bridges form, that increases the shear modulus. When that increases the shear modulus, that decreases the friction, allowing you to pull something that's heavy. Now, if you pour too much water into the sand, the capillary bridges, they either merge or they fall apart. And if they fall apart, then you decrease the shear modulus, which in turn increases the friction coefficient. When you increase the friction coefficient, now it's harder to pull the sled or pull the heavy material. And that's what they found. So that's what I mean by the friction coefficient and the shear modulus are inversely proportional. So what you're looking at is a graph of what I just explained to you, the volume. So we're talking about the water, the volume versus the friction coefficient. So I want to demonstrate to you that as they pull water, the friction coefficient decreases and it's easier for them to pull. And you can see a graph. This is a physical depiction of that. This is a physical illustration of what I just said. Let's go over to 0. So at 0, this means you haven't pulled any water. You haven't poured any water on the sand. If you notice, the friction coefficient is high, Brother Sai. So if the friction coefficient is high, that means the resistance is high. So that means that it's harder to pull whatever you need to pull. However, as you keep adding, if you keep pouring water on it, if you notice, the friction coefficient is doing what, Brother Sai? It's decreasing as you pour water on it. However, remember I said if you saturate the sand with it again, that increases the friction.
When we use that, that is correct. The brother was given the Roman was giving the name Africa. He got the name Africa from Africa, and they named him the Emperor of Africa. And then later the Romans just classified that all of that area, like in Carthage and all that, became Africa. But we don't even use that terminology. We use Africa.
And
Right.
Is that somewhere in the Medu?
Right. That's in Amharic. Right. It's in Kemet and it's in Ethiopia. They can actually see it, you know. And we also call our land Ta-Netcher. That's the land of divinity, the land of the creator.
So there you have it, family. The white man did not give us that name.
Right.
Stop giving credit to something that, you know, that's why it's important to know the Medu, like you said.
Right. You can read the wall. Mm-hmm.
Okay, brother, that's powerful right there. Let me ask you this here. The Medu, and I asked you this before, but we still have new people in the audience, and they want to know. They say that the Medu has never been deciphered. Now, by saying that, you know how dangerous that could be? That's dangerous right there to say something like that. Because by you saying that, that means that everything that we talking about, even when we look at the Temple of Luxor, why is you calling it the Temple of Luxor? The ones who says the Medu has never been deciphered, Professor Walter Williams. Why is you addressing any other names by the name of the Kemetic names if it never been deciphered? Talk about that.
My teacher, Sister Riketi Aman, already put that to bed. And the mere fact you just saw this presentation, all of this was deciphered from the Medu. All of the science that we know is from Kessler, the greatest scientist in America, European, got his information from the Medu. Okay, so I'm just trying to, and he said you need to get into the Medu. So even the white boys are telling you that you know, that's the key. We know the grammar. We know it. Listen, I'm on my way to Africa next month. January, I'll be in Nigeria, Niger, and Benin. And the reason why I'm going to Benin, for example, is that there's a pyramid there supposed to be 12,000 years old. And it looks like the Step Pyramid in Mexico. So I'm going there to take my own pictures. I'm going there to meet, there's a Niger Egyptologist who says he deciphered the Medu by using Hausa, the language Hausa. So the same words were in Hausa. So I want him to show me the Hausa, just like Diop did, and show me the Medu words so that I can compare. So when I come back, I can prove it beyond the shadow of a doubt. Here we are that the Medu is an African language. It's not an Asiatic language, it's an African language. And it comes from the interior of Africa. Now, if the pyramid there is 12,000 years old, brother, that's older than the pyramid in Egypt. That's parallel to who? It means that the people came out of the interior of Africa and then migrated down the Nile. As the climate changed, they moved towards the water. Because it used to be Lake Chad in the center there. That was all water there. And as that dried up, people migrated towards the water.
Now, I know you got to know that there is still pyramids in Kemet that have not even been found yet. Underground, under the earth. I mean, talk about that right there. It's so much of our works there that have not even been found.
Well, you know, in a way, it's kind of a honor that some of them have not been found. You know, because it would just be up in some museum, because the Arabs control that land now, and we have no jurisdiction over it. And Africa south of the Sahara have its own problems. We don't have good leadership. The African Union isn't doing anything to save Africans, per se. You only have a person that look like got some backbone is Mugabe. You know, and he's like 90 years old, so I don't know how long that's going to last. So, you know, until Africa can rise up and defend itself, we don't need to find nothing else. Somebody just going to come and take it. Right. You know, when Nigeria becomes a powerful country, they don't have to worry about their Muslims taking over all of North Nigeria. You know, if we don't have to worry about the Islamic wars and on the African continent, when we don't have to worry about Christians taking the minds of African people, until we do that. Right now, if a bunch of Christians found it, they would say this is the devil worship and probably tear it up. You know, so it's probably an honor that some of the stuff have not been found yet. But still, look at how much information are in museums around the world. We got more stuff in museums than exists in the Christian-Muslim war world altogether, just in the museums. So it just lets you know how great ancient Kemet was. So people can talk all they want, but everything that they hold of value comes almost from ancient Kemet.
Right. You know, me and Brother Reggie, we went to the museum last week. We had a nice crowd with us, man. We had a beautiful crowd with us. Even a couple of Moors was there. So I asked one of the Moorish brothers. I said, brother, how come you can't show us any artifacts in the museum of you? Show us you. I want to see where the Moors are at. Guess what? See, just like the religious folks do, guess what he told me, brother? He said the reason why they're not there was because they closed off the room. They shut the room down because brothers like Hakeem Bey and Tariq Bey and all of the brothers started coming, getting the information and bring. I looked at him, I'm like, come on, brother, are you serious, man? Are you telling me that they was afraid that they had to close the room because Tariq and you know, all the Moors was coming to get the knowledge? What about all the Kemetic brothers that's going up there? That's more powerful than anything. And they leaving it there for the world to see. You know, so that's what he told me. But let me ask you this now. This is the last question. I don't want to hold you too long. In terms of the chakras, I hear Brother Unk from the Amun-Ra Squad and another young brother by the name of Pharaoh, young brother, 22 years old. They was having this discussion on 125th Street. You was gone. You closed up. We came through there, and we was building out there. So the brothers is having a discussion about, one say, we didn't know nothing about chakras, and the Kemites wasn't dealing with the chakras, and that's a whole different thing. The other brother is saying, of course, we wasn't calling it chakra, we was using another name. But our ancestors dealt with that. Talk about that, brother. It's called Shechem Sarah.
Sekhem Shin Ra.
Okay.
Sekhem means the vital power. Like the Chinese have chi, the Japanese have ki, the Indians have Purana. In Swahili, we have Moyo. In Kemet, they call it Sekhem. That's your internal vital force. So Shin means circular. Right. Chakra is Sanskrit for energy centers. Yes. So Sekhem Shin Ra, you have to understand, Kemet was in existence before that. I showed you the crystals in the presentation. Right. Here, I'm carrying a crystal wand. This is where all that stuff comes from, the idea of a crystal wand, of all of those concepts. Being directing energy. Why do you think they went through all of those pains to put the crystals inside of the gemstones, the gemstones and crystals inside of the karas, inside of the mask of the king? How come they put inside of their sa? See, they didn't have jewelry. They had sa. That was spiritual protection. So they understood the energy. And on purpose, I left a chart of colorology in the presentation. So you can see the colors vibrated with your centers, with purple being the very highest. Then you go to dark blue. Then you go to light blue. Then you go to green or pink. then you go to yellow, then to orange, then to red, and black circumnavigates everything. And clear quartz deal with clarity of focus and thought throughout your whole aura. So no, we had this in ancient Kemet. We taught the rest of the world. In fact, not only Kemet, it was introduced into Kemet from the interior of Africa. There are maps showing that we were mining semi-precious stones 100,000 years ago. That's supposed to be before civilization came into existence. We already knew the power of gemstones and crystals before there was even anybody on any of the rest of the continents. Now let them smoke on that. Before people even got to the other continents, we were mining stones and semi-precious metals. Dr. Van Serter showed a furnace going back a couple of million years that can smelt iron and steel. We just learned how to do steel about 300 years ago in the Western world.
All right, my brother. Thank you for a beautiful and powerful presentation. I know the people are going to love this when I throw it up. In closing, my brother, are you open for any invitations for lectures? Do you do lectures? Do you go all over the world doing lectures? And if so, how do the people contact you to invite you out? Let's talk about that.
Yes, I do lectures all over the country. In fact, people are bringing me to London for a whole week to do. I'm going to France for a whole week to do lectures to teach babies and the adults. Yes. Okay. And I'm still lecturing all around the country. I tell people they can contact me on my Facebook or my website.
What is your Facebook?
My Facebook is Mfundishi Prof. My website is mfundishijahutimas.madunetcher.com.
Spell your name for Facebook. Spell the name for Facebook.
Facebook is Mfundishi, Mfundishi, and then Jahutimas, JHUTYMS. So that's for Facebook. And I always, like I'm taking people to the museum the first day of Kwanzaa, December 26th. Myself and Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, who used to be a curator there, they have a special exhibit for the Congo, and then that special exhibit for ancient Kemet, 11th dynasty. So me and Dr. Jeffries will be leading a group this Saturday, the 26th, first day of Kwanzaa.
You know, I had Jeffries sitting right here 2 weeks ago.
Oh, okay, excellent.
He killed it. He did good.
Okay, all right. So that's happening now. So they can contact me. I'm going to put my phone number up, but people, text me. I got people calling me all types of day, and they don't really have nothing to say.
I already know. Bro.
So, look, so 347-792-9138. So text me, and I'll be able to give you all the information that you need. Don't just call me and say, Mfundishi, I just saw your video. Brother, this is hot. This is so, okay, I appreciate that,
right.
But, text me. I'll give you the information that you need. Go on my website and order my book, Spiritual Warriors or Healers.
Support.
Okay.
That way, he could be able to write more books.
Yes, sir.
It costs money.
I'd like to say, Asante Sana, Ankh Uja Seneb Neb, Dua.